A young man goes missing after a date with someone he met online.
He had met a girl on Snapchat. I didn't know her.
Then he had not shown up for work.
He would have checked in with somebody. Deep down, I knew something was wrong.
When detectives get their first break in the case, they immediately suspect foul play.
I noticed blood on the tailgate. Looked like it had probably been washed out with a water hose.
There was also blood spattering on the back windshield.
In such a remote area, locating a body is a nearly impossible task.
There's actually hundreds of oil sites in the very rural areas of Jefferson Davis County.
They're very secluded, be a good place to commit a crime, and possibly there could be a dead body laying close to one of these well sites.
But when investigators follow the trail of evidence, it leads to a catfishing killer.
This is a case about a young man who met a girl and wanted an adventure, but it turns out that the girl had a sinister motive.
She lured this young gentleman. I mean, what normal person would even think to do that?
The video footage was captured on Sunday, and lo and behold, there it is. He's driving the truck. Everybody is considered a suspect at that time.
How could she do it by herself?
September 6th, 2022. It's a Tuesday morning in the small town of Pearl, Mississippi, when Darlene Sistrunk arrives at the Rankin County Sheriff's Department to report her son Carson missing.
Darlene reported that they last saw Carson on the afternoon of Sunday, September 4th, and this was Labor Day weekend.
That particular weekend, I left with some friends to go to Texas to this wedding. He just told his dad he was just going out. He didn't say where he was going or who he was meeting or anything. He said, well, I love you and be careful. Monday morning, his dad got up and went on to work like normal, and he didn't really pay attention that Carson's truck was not there. I got back in Monday evening after Labor Day.
Darlene says that when Carson still hadn't checked in by that evening, she started to get concerned.
I waited till about 7:38, and I texted him. I said, are you on your way back home? And didn't get a response. I called, and there was no answer. It went to voicemail. So, of course, I was up all night long.
Because it was the Labor Day weekend, Carson did not have work on Monday.
Tuesday, Carson was supposed to be at work, so I called his friend that he worked with. He said, Carson is not here.
Darlene tells the deputies that she contacted Carson's bank to see if he'd recently used his debit card.
They know that I'm on Carson's account. I just told them, look, can you look back on the transaction that Carson has made from yesterday? And they said, yeah. Here's one for gas at New Hebron gas station. I hung up, and I said, in my mind, I said, we don't know anybody from New Hebron.
New Hebron is a tiny rural community located 51 miles south of Pearl. Bank records show the withdrawal occurred around 8:30 p.m. Sunday night, a few hours after Carson was last seen. That's when Darlene decided it was time to contact authorities. But by the time she arrived at the sheriff's office, she'd remembered something.
Carson had met a girl on Snapchat. My thinking is maybe he went that evening to meet her.
Police need to try to ascertain some information He decided to go off for a few days and just don't want to be contacted? Or is it that he needs help?
I think it was September 6th is whenever I was told that everyone was kind of looking for Carson. Deep down, I knew something was wrong because just the way that Carson is, he would have checked in with somebody. Obviously, his phone was blowing up, right? You know, everybody's looking for him. He's not getting back with anybody.
I had a bad gut feeling. I just really started praying and just saying, you know, Carson, where are you?
Carson Monroe Sistrunk was born December 16, 1997 in Flowood, Mississippi.
I had 3 sons, and Carson was the baby of the 3. He was the smallest. He was bubbly, just a joy, you know, for us. He loved the outside, and as he grew older, my husband would take him hunting.
Carson's love of the outdoors was something he shared with his best friend, Tanner Gray.
Carson and I grew up together. Our moms were best friends, so it was kind of just, we had to be best friends, you know, and we did everything together. We loved the outdoors. Whenever we got older, we would house sit actually a good bit for one of the guys in our church, and he has a setup out there, like a little range, and Carson and I would get the .22 pistol and shoot the target.
Although Carson was born the smallest of his brothers, by the time he was a teenager, he'd become larger than life.
I think it was kind of the joke that we just nicknamed him Little Man. You know, the dude stood at 6'4", right at 300 pounds. I mean, the guy was not a little man. We were able to make that joke with him because he was so tenderhearted.
He was a gentle giant. Yep. A teddy bear. When he graduated and he got his truck, we had Little Man put on the tag.
He had a Ford Raptor, and he loved it. You know, he loved to drive. That was his baby.
After graduating high school in 2016, Carson went off to college to pursue his passion.
Carson went to diesel mechanic school to be a welder, and he loved it. And then he also transitioned into being a gunsmith.
He would go to work at 7 and work to 3:30 at the welding place, and then leave there and then go to his gunsmith job.
He would build guns, he set up guns. He knew everything there was to know about a gun. So it was just cool to see him flourish in what he loved to do.
By 24, Carson seemed to already have his life figured out.
He had great parents, he had great friends. He had had a few previous relationships that didn't pan out. I think that made him kind of keep his cards close to him. He was a very private person. He may not say exactly where he was going or what he was doing, but if he's going to be gone for like a weekend or something, he would say, I'll be back, you know, this day.
Now, Carson's loved ones fear the worst due to his unusual silence.
When Miss Darlene came in and made her missing person report, she stated that there was a girl that Carson had met online.
Carson had told me that he had met a girl on Snapchat. And I said, oh, okay. And he had told me, he said that he had met her a couple of times. I didn't know her.
When there's a missing persons report, some of the first steps are to check hospitals, to check jails. All those leads came up with nothing. Law enforcement applied for an exigent circumstance warrant with the cell phone company to ping his last location. That location came up to New Hebron, Mississippi at the same general time as that last transaction with his credit card.
Rankin County sheriffs put out an alert on Carson's truck.
Carson drove a Ford Raptor. It was silver in color, and it had a very distinctive darker colored hood. It was just by happenstance that there was a sheriff with the Lawrence County Sheriff's Department that was in the area and happened to see the vehicle, and he called it in.
Sheriff's deputy actually saw that truck at the Old Hebron Grocery in Lawrence County.
But the deputy didn't see anyone matching Carson's description and waits for backup to avoid scaring potential witnesses away.
There are several individuals around the vehicle. Everybody is considered a suspect that's around that vehicle at that time until you can weed them out and find out what their connection is to Carson's trunk. Why were they there around that truck?
Coming up, investigators discover a shady transaction.
She said she purchased it from a man, and she gave the name that he went by as C Money.
And surveillance footage exposes Carson's last known location.
You could see a figure inside the passenger side, but you could not identify who it was.
While Carson's sistrunk remains missing, detectives have located his vehicle in New Hebron, Mississippi.
New Hebron, Mississippi is a very rural town. A lot of farmland. Oil and gas wells are very prevalent in that area.
When investigators arrive at the grocery store, they find a group of people gathered around the truck. One of them is a young woman.
She had the keys to the truck. There were several other people around who said she was the one who had been driving that truck.
She identified herself as Sierra Inscoe at that point.
Detectives ask Sierra if she's the woman Carson was supposed to meet. She claims to have no idea what they're talking about.
Sierra said that she did not know who Carson's sistrunk was.
Obviously, they asked about how she came to be in possession of this vehicle. She said that she bought it from somebody.
She produced a bill of sale-like document that she had purchased the truck for $16,000, and she said she purchased it from a man, and she gave the name that he went by as C Money.
However, a quick glance makes investigators question the legitimacy of the document.
Of course, you could look and tell that it was not a real bill of sale because it's just written on a piece of paper. The thing about it is you can't just discard that information and assume that she's lying about the transaction or about her story.
Sierra says she doesn't know C Money's real name or how the truck came into his possession. However, she reveals that he likely stole it based on their frightening interaction.
Sierra said that she had been threatened by him if she ever talked about anything, that he would kill her.
There was 3 males there with her at the truck. I got to find out what their connection is to Carson's sistrunk, if they knew Carson's sistrunk, what their connection is to Sierra Inscoe.
None of the men identify themselves as C Money, but they say Sierra has driven them around for the past few days. They recently met the 20-year-old at work as she just moved to the area.
I met Sierra through mutual friends. We'd be in classes together, and then we just, grew a friendship through that. She was a very nice person. She was very, tomboyish. She was the only girl on the football team in high school. She was a very well-known person, for sure, because she just had, a very big personality, so everybody knew of her. She was struggling, with her parents because she didn't have her mom in the picture, and then her dad wasn't home much either. She never stayed in school. Whenever she moved to Mississippi, we did not talk much at all. And she told me that she was going to be moving there for a welding job.
Sierra struggled to find stability and continued to move around, living with various friends and family.
She had lived in Florida. She lived in Tennessee. She stayed with her mother on very few occasions, who lived there in the northwest side of Jeff Davis County. Some of the farmers, the chicken farmers up in that area, she'll work for them. Sometimes she'll stay at some of their trailers on their property. We're trying to determine where Sierra really hung out a lot and stayed, but she was a drifter.
Unfamiliar with the new face in town, investigators bring Sierra Inscoe into the Rankin County Sheriff's Office for a formal interview to learn more about her and the vehicle purchase.
Sierra was picked up by the Rankin County Sheriff's Office investigators, and they also took the truck with them.
Sierra says the last place she and her friends went was an old oil well in Jefferson Davis County.
There's actually hundreds of oil sites in the very rural areas of Jefferson Davis County.
She said that her and some of her friends like to go to these gas well locations and party and smoke weed and stuff like that.
Detectives find her story suspicious, so they ask her to show them the oil wells she and her friends went to.
The gas wells are small little plots of dirt that usually square. There may be a piece of pipe sticking out of the ground with some valves on it and a few tanks on the side.
Sierra reluctantly agrees, but detectives' suspicions grow when she suddenly seems to forget where she went.
She kept on redirecting every time she could. Instead of pointing to the actual oil site, she pointed them to another one. And that was one of those rabbit trails that was very frustrating to law enforcement.
After several miscues, Sierra finally guides investigators to a remote well. After a brief search, they find evidence it's the correct place.
We actually brought Carson's vehicle down to the well site. It was on a record, on a rollback record.
In fact, the tire trucks that were at that oil site matched Carson's truck.
Considering Sierra's strange behavior, detectives wonder if she knows what really happened here.
The gas wells, they're very secluded. They're surrounded by trees. Be a good place to commit a crime. And possibly there could be a dead body laying close to one of these well sites.
Carson Sistrunk has been missing for over 48 hours. And while Sierra Inscoe claims she doesn't know where he is, investigators suspect she's lying. To aid in their ongoing search, the New Hebron Sheriff's Department enlists the aid of the Mississippi Bureau of Investigations.
We've come in to assist when called upon by the local sheriff's offices or police departments. When I got the call, it was a little after midnight on the 7th of September, 2022. The truck had been placed on a flatbed wrecker. When I walked by the truck with my flashlight, I just shined the light on the truck just to look at it.
With the new perspective, Agent Riley notices something alarming.
I noticed blood on the bottom of the tailgate. You could see the remnants of blood inside the truck in the cracks. Some debris that was back there looked like it had probably been washed out with a water hose at some point. And up under the truck, there was a large amount of what appeared to be blood on the underside of the bed and on top of the spare tire. I knew that something bad had happened to somebody or something.
When asked about the blood, Sierra has a seemingly innocent explanation.
Miss Inscoe claimed that she'd hit a deer and had thrown it in the back of the truck. That's where the blood came from.
But with no collision damage to the truck, detectives find that difficult to believe.
She was actually detained and taken back to Rankin County.
While Sierra is taken into custody, Agent Riley calls one of the Bureau's forensic units to the scene.
In the course of their documenting this vehicle, they found some bags that contained clothes in the back of the vehicle. Those clothes would traditionally have been worn by a female. It appeared that there was some blood spatter on those clothes.
They took samples from inside the truck, from in the bed of the truck, underneath the truck, and did their job very well. And all that stuff was taken to the crime lab and to a DNA lab in Jackson.
There was also blood spattering on the back windshield of the truck. And what that implied to law enforcement that somebody had been sitting in the back of the truck, could very well have been shot.
By the time the inspection is complete, it's morning, and investigators have enough light to search the area for any sign of Carson.
I took my metal detectors up there, and we searched that whole well site area to see if we could locate any shell casings.
They searched extensively for any other evidence, but found nothing. They couldn't find anything other than those tire tracks.
Sierra seemed to be real deceptive in her answers. It really wastes a lot of time when a suspect tells you a story that's not true.
It occurs to Agent Riley that if their suspicions about Sierra are correct, she could have easily led them to the wrong oil site to throw them off.
I got to thinking about what Miss Inscoe had said several hours earlier about her frequenting these gas well locations. And that led me to believe that she was familiar with a lot of them. So I called a friend of mine who checking and reading the meters and stuff on them on a daily basis. I called him and I said, look, please have your guys that's checking these wells, have them all over the next couple of days, be real observant, be watching for things out of the ordinary. And within 15 or 20 minutes, he called me and said one of his drivers had just found a body.
Coming up, detectives confirm Sierra has been lying to them.
She didn't have a job. She shouldn't have money to have a truck like that.
But is it proof she committed murder?
She stuck with her story.
C-Money was probably the most wanted man in southeast Mississippi.
After 3 days missing, a body matching Carson Sistrunk's description has been located at an oil well site in New Hebron. Investigators immediately drive out to the second site, which is located a few miles away.
It's a dirt road, and as you get on top of the well site area, you can see tracks, and they stop, and then they back up into a bunch of kudzu vines. That's where the body was laying.
Decomposition was very bad. There was maggots on the body, flies, and you could tell it had been there for a couple of days.
It's full-fledged summer in September here, and with the heat, it's not uncommon that a body could decompose in 2.5, 3 days.
The damage to the body makes it nearly impossible to determine cause of death or to make a positive ID.
I was pretty confident that that was Carson Sistrunk's body laying there, but without confirmation from the state medical examiner, I couldn't say that.
Everything was collected, put in body bags, and turned over to the coroner and sent to the crime lab.
Once we found the body. We had good reason to believe that it was a homicide. That's when I knew I had to question Miss Inscoe some more to try to figure out the truth of what happened.
While the body is transported to the state medical examiner's office, investigators return to Rankin County to interrogate Sierra Inscoe.
She stuck to her story that she had told the investigators earlier that day. On no Carson Sistrunk. I've never seen Carson Sistrunk. I don't know anything about a body. You got the wrong person.
Law enforcement did not have any concrete evidence to show that Sierra stole the truck. It could very well have been that somebody gave Sierra the keys and she had the truck in good faith.
We conferred with the district attorney's office, and they said we did not have enough information to hold her. That's when we really had to release her from jail. It's frustrating, but you have to run every lead down.
Detectives need solid evidence to refute Sierra's story, so they go back to the one place they know both she and Carson had been.
Carson's last credit card transaction was at an ATM at a New Hebron Quick Stop gas station, and that was done at 8:39 p.m.
We talked to the owner of the store, found the video footage of the day and time in question.
The video footage was captured on Sunday, September the 4th, a little after 8 p.m. And lo and behold, there it is. He's driving the truck.
As Carson pulls up to a gas pump, investigators see he isn't alone.
There's a glare on the windshield and off the hood of the truck, and you could see a figure inside the passenger side, but you could not identify who it was. He gets out, comes inside, uses his debit card.
It was tremendous for us to be able to look and to verify the same clothing that Carson had on was the same clothing that was on the body we found at that well site.
While Carson pays for the gas inside, a different man approaches the truck.
What I noticed immediately was that the male subject that came up to the passenger in Mr. Sistrunk's vehicle, it was obvious that they knew each other. You could tell by his body language, and they talked for probably a minute or so.
The biggest question for investigators at this point is who is sitting in the front seat of Carson's truck. Sierra, she said that a guy named C Money sold her the truck. So law enforcement wanted to check to see if this guy in the surveillance video was actually C Money.
We were able to locate the person, the male subject, by showing the video footage to some people in the area. And his name was Curly.
This man frequented that area. Once they found Curly, they showed him a copy of the surveillance video, and he was able to identify the person sitting in the front seat of Carson's vehicle as Sierra Inscoe.
Curly said that he knew Sierra Inscoe personally. They had dated in the past, and he was very adamant that that's who it was in the truck.
Despite the connection, Curly says he isn't the C Money they're looking for.
After we identified him and knowing his background and everything, we ruled him out pretty quick.
But his statement, combined with the surveillance video, gives detectives proof that Sierra lied to them.
Once we identified Miss Inscoe as being in the truck with Carson at the quick stop, she was our prime suspect.
Speaking with locals on the party scene, investigators track down some acquaintances who knew Sierra and ask what they know.
According to some eyewitnesses, they had seen Mr. Sistrunk with her before, a couple of weeks prior to him being murdered.
The investigators have some friends saying that she was going to get a new vehicle before her birthday. And all of a sudden, she's riding around in one.
The people we interviewed said that they knew she didn't have a job, she shouldn't have money to have a truck like that, and it kind of made them nervous because they didn't think she had, actually bought the truck.
Some of the people investigators spoke to reported seeing blood in the bed of the truck. And when they asked Sierra what happened, she told different people different stories.
She'd say she had a deer, she had a dog, she had a hog. I think she told somebody that even the person that owned the truck's sister had hit a deer.
Sierra had showed up Sunday night late and wanted to rinse out the truck.
She seemed to be acting strange, acting different, like she hadn't acted a few days before.
They knew something was up. They didn't want to get in it. They didn't want to get near it. Everybody was on to her and wanted no part of it.
The circumstantial evidence against Sierra Inscoe is growing by the minute. But it's not yet enough to charge her with murder.
For an investigator to have enough evidence to obtain a murder warrant for anybody, you at least need to know how they died. We had to get the autopsy completed. The state medical examiner's office performed an autopsy.
The cause of death was multiple gunshot wounds, 2 to the chest and 1 to the head, and every one of them had a slightly upward trajectory. He had to be above the gun.
The bullet that came from the body was in fragments. The only thing that they were able to determine was that it came from a 9mm gun.
Identifying the body is more difficult, but the medical examiner is able to lift a clear fingerprint.
The victim was identified as Carson Sistron. And once those fingerprints came back as him, then the charges were taken out.
It was unthinkable. We can't still wrap our head around what happened and how it happened,
2 days after her release, authorities are now armed with an arrest warrant for Sierra Inscoe.
I went to an address in Jones County, Mississippi, along with several other agents. We surrounded the house. She came out with her hands up. It was a very uneventful arrest, thank goodness.
I didn't really believe it at first, but then I was like, wow, I guess this is possible. I do think that she was capable of doing it for attention.
On the day of the arrest, she wanted to talk to me again.
Once again, Sierra claims she bought the truck from the mysterious C Money. But this time, she gives detectives more to go on.
She said his first name was Corey, but she didn't know his last name, that he got orders to move dope and do things, that there was gang affiliations.
Although she's lied to them before, investigators consider the possibility that she's giving them an accomplice.
Carson was a very above average size. I don't think there'd be any way that she would be able to lift his body into the bed of the truck by herself.
C Money was probably the most wanted man in southeast Mississippi for the next 7 to 14 days.
I sought out other state agencies' help, Bureau of Narcotics, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, FBI. Nobody could identify this person.
We all made the decision that, it's a fictitious person. He doesn't exist, and we just stopped chasing that rabbit hole.
None of Sierra's local friends seem to have helped her either.
All their alibis checked out. We had ruled out any other suspects with the exception of Miss Inscoe.
How did she do it by herself? And that was a question that we wrestled with for a while.
Hoping for another link between Sierra and Carson, investigators obtain a search warrant for Sierra's social media accounts.
We were able to obtain the Snapchat records, which showed that there was communication between his account and her account. The gist of the conversation was Carson stated, "I'm going to be leaving soon, maybe a little late," and then her response was something along the lines of, "Okay."
I believe that Miss Inscoe lured Carson Sistrunk to a location in New Hebron. When they met, they traveled from that location to the place that we found him at that gas well site. I believe they were just going there to have a good time.
I don't know if he could have taken her out and maybe showed her how to shoot a gun. He carried a gun in the side of the truck. And then he also had like a small little pistol in the console that he carried.
Based on the forensic analysis of the truck, it looks as if that Carson was probably sitting on the tailgate of the truck and that Sierra was on the ground. Something happened. She took his gun and she shot him.
The trajectories of those shots were slightly upward, indicated to us that he was most likely sitting on the tailgate of the vehicle when he was shot, and then he fell into the back of the vehicle.
I believe she backed the truck up real quick, slammed on brakes, he fell out, and she took off.
Forensic testing confirms investigators' theory about the shooting.
The blood that was sent off for DNA analysis, the blood that was on the truck belonged to Carson Sistrunk. The spots on the clothes inside the truck were verified to be blood, and that was also Carson's blood.
After analysis by the crime lab, it was confirmed that the DNA on the clothes we found in the truck came back to Sierra Inscoe.
Now it's up to prosecutors to convince a jury that the 21-year-old young woman turned into a murderer.
When you get to a trial, you have to build that case to a jury. In a murder case, you don't have that victim to talk. You have to talk for them. It's my job to paint that picture for the jury.
After a years-long investigation, the evidence seems to prove Sierra Inscoe is the one who murdered Carson Sistrunk. The question now facing prosecutors is why. They believe the answer is greed.
This is a case about a young man who met a girl and wanted an adventure, and it turns out that the girl that he thought was fun had a sinister motive. She had told many people that she was going to have a truck by her birthday, and he had a very nice truck.
I just think she felt unloved and that she was trying to, find a connection with somebody. She was trying so hard to have friends and fit in everywhere, and it just wasn't working out. So she was trying to gain these things in order to fit in properly and stuff, and I guess the truck was one of them.
Miss Inscoe lured this young gentleman, good home life, good parents, involved in the church, and she took all that away from him just for his truck. I mean, what normal person would even think to do that?
The trial is scheduled for July 2024, nearly 2 years after Carson was murdered. But the case never makes it to court.
Ultimately, she pled guilty to second-degree murder.
It didn't really shock me because of the multitude of evidence that we had against her.
She was imposed with 40 years in the Mississippi Department of Corrections. 5 of those years is suspended. She has to serve 35, and then those 5 years will be served on post-release supervision. There is also no doubt that she will serve every day of that 35 years.
During her plea hearing, Sierra is offered the opportunity to speak directly to Carson's family.
She gave an allocution that lasted 10 minutes, and I'll never forget, she opened with, "I did it, I'm sorry, I killed him." And that was the first time that anybody had ever heard those words out of her mouth.
She cried. She begged the family for forgiveness, that she didn't know why she did it, that she acted alone, that no one else was with her.
I feel like justice was served to her. I feel like that she should have gotten life, but she will serve what she was given.
I think Sierra snapped because she was trying to keep up to a certain standard. She was trying to keep up with all the lies that she was telling. She was trying to, be a person she wasn't.
Miss Inscoe ultimately took Carson's sister-uncle's life to take his truck to show off to her buddies. That just shows you how evil Miss Inscoe is.
I think the lesson to take away from this case would probably be, to be very wary about who you place your trust in, especially in the world we live in today where we can instantly connect with people hundreds of miles away. People just need to be careful.
Carson was loved, by a lot of people. There was over 700 people that came to the memorial service.
Man, Carson would love to see this. How much support he has. Being a pallbearer at your best friend's funeral it's tough. You've spent your whole life together, and now you're carrying him to his grave, where he's going to stay for the rest of eternity.
Carson had that way about him that drew people in. It was that sweet, tender spirit. He was the best of us.
I think just having someone in your life like Carson, you were blessed. If I could say something to Carson right now, it'd be, I miss you. I miss you, Bubba. I miss you every day.
I have to say that the 24 years that we had Carson was the time that the Lord allowed us to have him. And truly, it was a joy. It was a joy.
The realization that the son-in-law had actively participated in the betrayal of his own family left the detectives cold. Chow had not only provided the key to their home, but he had also helped orchestrate the timing of the attack, ensuring his in-laws returned to an apartment where two killers lay in wait. Investigators quickly moved to arrest Daphne right at her Houston home. Inside her residence, they discovered detailed ledgers outlining the massive fees she charged her clients for spiritual services, including removing and applying curses. The ledger confirmed that she had been charging desperate families tens of thousands of dollars, preying on their fears and superstitions. The shadow of justice. With the conspirators in custody, the district attorney's office faced a difficult legal challenge. While they had confessions from Willie and Bobby, securing a conviction against Daphne Wright, the true puppet master who had never stepped foot inside the Arlington apartment, would require undeniable, direct testimony. To ensure that the woman who ordered the executions of Long and Hong was placed behind bars for the rest of her life, prosecutors made a difficult decision. They reached an agreement with Chow Tran, offering him immunity from prosecution in exchange for his full, unvarnished testimony against Daphne, Bobby, and Willie. It was a deal with the devil, one that left the homicide detectives with a bittersweet feeling, but was deemed necessary to bring down the primary architect of the tragedy. During Daphne's trial in August of 2019, Chow Tran took the stand. He painted a vivid picture of a family gripped by fear, paralyzed by the belief that Daphne possessed supernatural powers that could destroy their lives if they did not pay her. He claimed that his mother-in-law, Hong Le, had grown so desperate to save her family from Daphne's spiritual wrath that she had actually suggested sacrificing herself so they could collect the insurance money. Chow testified that he had left the key under the doormat, knowing that Bobby Guillory would retrieve it. The defense fiercely attacked Chow's credibility. arguing that there was no written documentation of the $280,000 debt. They argued that Chow was a greedy, willing participant who wanted the $850,000 insurance payout all to himself, and that he'd used Daphne as a convenient scapegoat. In September of 2019, the jury returned with their verdict. Daphne Wright was found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby Guillory and Willie Guillory were also held accountable for their violent actions, though Chow Tran walked away free of criminal charges, a reality that would forever sit uneasily with. The dedicated detectives who worked tirelessly to find justice for Long and Hong, the truth had finally been dragged into the light. The memory of the sweet, hard-working couple who had traveled across the world to build a life of love and family would not be forgotten. The community of Arlington healed, reminded that true fortune is never found in greed or fear, but in the quiet, honest moments of love shared with those we cherish most. The dawn call and a veteran officer's horror. The city of Arlington, Texas, in the early summer of 2012, was bathed in bright golden sunshine. Yet beneath its vibrant surface lay a complex tapestry of diverse cultures. The city was home to a large, close-knit Vietnamese immigrant community, people who had carried their rich heritage, spiritual beliefs, and hopes for a better life across the ocean to build a new future. At 7:29 on the morning of June 10th, 2012, the quiet of a peaceful Sunday was shattered. Emergency dispatchers received a frantic call from a 38-year-old Vietnamese immigrant named Chow Tran. His voice over the line was trembling, hesitant, and filled with absolute dread. Chow requested a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, explaining that the family had been unable to reach them since the previous evening. When the dispatcher asked for the names of the residents, Chow struggled to spell them out through his panic. He stated his father-in-law was named Long Nguyen, who was in his early 70s, and his mother-in-law was Hong Lu. Chow explained that when his wife and teenage son went to the apartment to check on them, they noticed the front window was wide open. Inside, furniture appeared to be overturned and items were scattered. Terrified by the sight, the family remained outside, lacking the courage to step into the silent, darkened home. Officer Weller, a seasoned patrol officer, was the first to arrive at the scene. Pulling up to the apartment complex, he immediately sensed something was wrong. Welfare checks rarely occurred so early in the morning, and it was even more unusual to find an entire extended family gathered outside, their faces pale with anxiety. Stepping through the unlocked front door, Officer Weller switched on his flashlight and cautiously crossed the threshold. The living room was in complete disarray. Drawers had been ransacked, compact discs lay scattered across the carpet, and the sofa was pushed aside. All initial signs pointed to a burglary in progress. Weller called out repeatedly, but his voice was met only by an eerie, heavy silence. He cleared the kitchen and the bathroom before stopping at the entrance of the sole bedroom. The room was dim. Weller swept his flashlight across the space. At first glance, he saw nothing unusual and assumed the elderly couple had simply gone for an early walk or were visiting relatives. But as he turned to leave, his flashlight caught a series of dark smudges on the wall next to a small, narrow closet in the corner. The marks looked like handprints left by someone clawing at the drywall in sheer desperation. An overwhelming dread washed over Weller. Every instinct told him that something horrific lay behind that wooden closet door. He hesitated, but his duty compelled him to act. He reached out and slowly pulled the door open. Inside the cramped space, Weller froze. Huddled together on the floor were the bodies of Long Nguyen and Hong Lu. They were tightly hogtied with thick layers of gray duct tape. Their heads and mouths were wrapped completely in tape, and there was blood everywhere. In his 14 years on the force, Weller had never witnessed a scene so brutal and tragic. He stumbled back into the living room, his mind blank and his chest tight. It took him several long moments to regain his composure before he could key his radio to request A. Supervisor and the crime scene unit. Peculiar clues and a broken American dream. Hours later, Detective Stewart, a veteran homicide investigator with 21 years of experience, arrived at the apartment. He, too, was shaken by the sheer savagery of the crime. Both elderly victims had suffered severe blunt force trauma to their heads and foreheads, injuries consistent with being struck by a heavy tool like a hammer or a crowbar. However, the most disturbing detail was the immense amount of duct tape used to suffocate them. As detectives processed the scene, they uncovered several highly unusual clues that seemed to contradict the theory of a simple burglary. On the living room coffee table sat a plate containing crushed prescription pills, laid out as if to be snorted, alongside a partially smoked marijuana cigarette. More strikingly, a beer bottle in the corner of the room was wrapped in a light blue bandana. To Arlington's gang unit, a light blue bandana was a well-known symbol used by local Asian youth gangs active in extortion and protection rackets. Leaving the bandana behind seemed like a deliberate statement, a calling card to claim responsibility. Yet Detective Stewart seasoned instincts made him skeptical. The scene felt too staged, almost too perfect. Street gang members committing a robbery rarely resorted to such meticulous, personal, and absolute violence against an elderly couple who posed no threat. Stewart theorized that the entire scene had been deliberately set up to mislead the investigation. To understand the motive, police looked into the background of the victims. Long and Hong had immigrated to the United States from Vietnam in the year 2000, bringing their children to Arlington to pursue the American dream. They eventually established a commercial sewing business, placing their son-in-law, Chow Tran, in charge of operations and client relations because he spoke the most fluent English. For nearly a decade, their hard work paid off. The business secured lucrative manufacturing contracts with major global entertainment brands. They bought a home, provided for their children, and watched their dream turn into reality. However, by 2011, their fortunes took a devastating turn. Major contracts were lost, the business plummeted into debt, and financial ruin loomed. In traditional Asian culture, when a family faces consecutive, unexplained misfortunes, it is common to believe they are suffering from a curse or a streak of bad luck. In such desperate times, families often seek out a spiritual advisor to lift the curse, appease spiritual forces, and restore prosperity. The Mystical World and the Houston Advisor. Through interviews with Chow Tran, Detective Stewart learned that during the business's lowest point, Hong and Chow searched local Vietnamese language newspapers. They found an advertisement for a spiritual advisor named Daphne Wright, operating out of Houston, about 250 miles away. Daphne advertised herself as a powerful mystic capable of removing severe curses, bringing good fortune, or even placing curses on rivals if requested. Desperate for a solution, Chow traveled to Houston to meet Daphne in person. After an expensive and elaborate blessing ritual, the family felt a surge of hope that their business would soon recover. But instead of a turnaround, the family found themselves sinking deeper into debt. Over the course of a year, Daphne demanded astronomical fees for continuous rituals, running a line of credit that the desperate family struggled to pay. On June 11, 2012, autopsies conducted at the Tarrant County Medical Examiner's office revealed shocking details. While both victims had sustained heavy blunt force injuries to the head, those wounds were not the cause of death. Hong's face had been wrapped in 25 feet of duct tape, and Long's face had been wrapped in 10 feet of tape. Both had died of slow, agonizing suffocation. This confirmed that the killers did not merely wish to restrain them. Their explicit intent was a cruel and painful execution. As the investigation stalled, with DNA and fingerprints from a marijuana cigarette yielding no matches in the FBI's National Codes database, Detective Stewart received an unexpected call. An agent from a major life insurance company revealed that they had received claims for two substantial policies on Long and Hong. totaling over $1 million. The sole beneficiary of these policies was none other than Chow Tran. When brought in for questioning regarding the policies, Chow explained calmly that since the business was in his in-laws' names, the policies were intended to ensure the business could survive if either parent passed away. Chow also provided an airtight alibi for the night of the murders. He explained that the entire family had gathered at his home to celebrate Long's birthday, playing cards until past 10 o'clock in the evening, after which another relative drove the elderly couple home. Every family member cooperated fully, providing DNA and fingerprint samples. None of their profiles matched the evidence left at the crime scene. Lacking direct evidence to connect Chow or any relative to the murders, the investigation went cold, remaining unresolved for 3 long years. A breakthrough from an unlikely source. The breakthrough came in the fall of 2015 from a completely unrelated incident. Police in Houston arrested a young man named Willie Guillory for stealing a horse, a felony in the state of Texas. When Willie's DNA profile was entered into the National Cody's database as a convicted felon, the system triggered an immediate red alert. His DNA was an identical match to the saliva found on the partially smoked marijuana cigarette left at the Arlington crime scene in 2012. At the time of the murders, Willie was only 16 years old with no prior felony convictions, which was why his profile had never been in the system. Confronted by Arlington detectives and the undeniable forensic evidence, the young man broke down. Crying hysterically, Willie admitted to being at the apartment that night, but insisted he was only there to assist his uncle, 49-year-old Bobby Guillory. According to Willie, his uncle had been hired to carry out the hit by a woman named Daphne Wright. Bobby had provided Willie with a house key to open the apartment door. They had brought the beer bottle, the blue bandana, the crushed pills, and the marijuana to stage a fake gang-related robbery. When Long and Hong arrived home, the two men ambushed them, while Willie held Hong to keep her from screaming. Bobby used a heavy object to beat Long unconscious. Once the elderly couple was incapacitated, the men used duct tape to bind them securely, dragged them into the bedroom closet, and fled the scene. The mastermind and the blood contract. Detectives immediately traveled to Katy, Texas, to arrest Bobby Guillory. Facing capital murder charges, Bobby realized there was no escape and confessed his role in the crime. He explained that in 2011, he was unemployed, starving, and facing homelessness. Daphne Wright had exploited his financial desperation, offering him $10,000 to take care of her clients in Arlington. Bobby revealed that Chow Tran and Hong Lu owed Daphne an enormous spiritual debt, which had ballooned to between $250,000 and $280,000 due to the ongoing cost of her rituals. When the family could no longer pay, Daphne learned of the substantial life insurance policies. She decided that the only way to collect her money was to have the elderly couple killed, allowing Chow to claim the insurance payouts and settle the debt. The most shocking revelation of Bobby's confession was how he obtained the key to the apartment. Bobby stated that Daphne had given him the key, telling him she received it directly from the son-in-law, Chow Tran, the witness and an incomplete justice. During a search of Daphne Wright's Houston home, detectives recovered a detailed ledger. It documented the exorbitant fees she charged vulnerable clients for her spiritual services, with amounts ranging from $10,000 to $40,000 per ritual. When questioned, Daphne remained cold, detached, and refused to speak without her attorney. Upon learning of the arrests, Chow Tran immediately severed contact with the police, communicating only through his lawyer. Financial records revealed that shortly after receiving the insurance payouts, Chow closed a sewing business and purchased an expensive new home, making several large cash transactions believed to be payments to Daphne. To secure a conviction against the mastermind, prosecutors made a controversial decision to offer Chow Tran immunity in exchange for his testimony against Daphne, Bobby, and Willie. Taking the stand in August 2019, Chow portrayed Daphne as a greedy, manipulative woman who controlled his family through fear. He claimed they believed she possessed real spiritual powers and could inflict terrible curses on them if they failed to pay. Chow even offered a bizarre explanation, claiming his mother-in-law, Hong, had voluntarily offered herself as a sacrifice to secure the insurance money and save the family from Daphne's wrath. Despite the defense's efforts to expose Chow as the true architect of the murders who wanted the insurance money for himself, the jury focused on the overwhelming evidence against the co-conspirators. In September 2019, Daphne Wright was found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby and Willie Guillory also received lengthy prison sentences for their roles in conspiracy. Though the case is legally resolved, the fact that Chow Tran remains free continues to weigh heavily on Detective Stewart and the Arlington police force. Yet they hold on to a profound belief that what is done in the dark will eventually be brought to light, and that every individual must ultimately answer for their actions. In the vibrant, diverse heart of Arlington, Texas, a beautiful tapestry of cultures weaves together to form a resilient community. Among the many bright threads in this tapestry were Long Nguyen and Hong Lee. They were a sweet, endearing elderly couple whose smiles could light up a room and whose generosity knew no bounds. They bothered no one, loved everyone, and carried with them the profound, time-honored traditions of their beautiful homeland, Vietnam. When Long and Hong immigrated to the United States in the year 2000, they brought with them their most cherished possession, their beloved family. They had decided to pick up their stakes and move across the world with their 3 children, seeking the radiant promise of the American dream. Arlington, a bustling city in Tarrant County, was the perfect place. It was a city where different cultures harmonized, home to a large, supportive Vietnamese community that had flourished since the late 1970s. Long and Hong studied the area carefully, knowing it would be a wonderful place to do business, nurture their family, and build a legacy for their grandchildren. With hope in their hearts, the couple started a commercial sewing business. They enlisted the help of their son-in-law, Chow Tran, to help manage the daily operations. Chow spoke English well and became the welcoming face of the enterprise, dealing with contractors and clients. For nearly a decade, the family poured their love and hard work into their craft. Their American dream truly blossomed when they secured a highly lucrative contract to make garments for a commercial giant, bringing the magic of Disney into their sewing rooms. They were a prominent, respected family, deeply tied to the community, proving that hard work and a positive spirit could turn dreams into reality. But in life, just as in business, there are seasons of abundance and seasons of quiet. By the year 2011, the family experienced a gentle lull. The major contracts slowed down, and the sewing machines hummed a little less frequently. Rather than give up, the family looked to their cultural roots for guidance, believing firmly that a shift in spiritual energy can invite good fortune back into their lives. They sought a traditional solution, a way to heal their business and protect their family's future. Little did they know, their innocent quest for spiritual guidance would introduce them to a cast of characters that would turn their peaceful lives into a profound mystery, ultimately uniting a veteran police force and the community in a triumphant quest for truth. Chapter 1. The Search for Good Fortune. For thousands of years, many Eastern cultures have embraced the beautiful belief in lucky spirits and guardians of prosperity. It is a gentle tradition, one that brings comfort during times of transition. When families face major life events, whether it is a shifting business, a new marriage, or a need for healing, they sometimes invite a spiritual advisor into their homes to restore balance. Long and Hong were firm believers in this old-style mysticism from their homeland. They possessed a pure, trusting innocence, believing that there were gifted people out there who could lift burdens and invite good fortune. Searching through a local Vietnamese newspaper, Chow Tran and his mother-in-law, Hong, found an advertisement for a spiritual advisor located 250 miles away in the bustling city of Houston. The advisor, a woman named Daphne Wright, advertised that she possessed a unique ability to clear away negative energy and restore prosperity. Trusting and hopeful, Chow contacted Daphne and asked for her assistance. Daphne agreed to meet Chow at her Houston home for a consultation. After a traditional ritual, the family felt incredibly uplifted, hopeful that the sewing business would turn around and that their days of worry were behind them. They believed their spiritual savior was the key to a bright new chapter. However, Daphne Wright was not the benevolent guide she claimed to be. She was, in reality, a rather cynical businesswoman who viewed spirituality through the lens of profit. Instead of offering genuine comfort, she began charging the family exorbitant fees. Long and Hong, driven by their deep love for their family and their desperate wish to see their children succeed, continued to pour their hard-earned money into Daphne's rituals. Slowly but surely, a financial burden grew. The family found themselves owing somewhere between $250,000 and $280,000. Daphne was a loud, direct woman who ran her household and her business with an iron grip. When the debt grew too large and the family struggled to pay, Daphne's true colors began to show. She was not a healer, she was a collector, and she was determined to get her money, setting in motion a bizarre and complex chain of events that would soon baffle the Arlington Police Department. Chapter 2, A Peculiar Morning. The morning of June 10, 2012, began like any other sunny Texas day, but it would soon present a perplexing puzzle for local law enforcement. At 7:29 in the morning, emergency dispatchers received a concerned call from 38-year-old Chow Tran. He was asking for a welfare check on his elderly in-laws. The dispatcher, a calm and reassuring voice on the line, asked the names of the individuals. Chow spelled them out carefully. His name is Long. Last name is Wenguyen. He is 70-something right now. Chow explained that he, his wife, and his teenage son had gone to the apartment to check on the couple. They had noticed an open window and saw that things inside looked out of place, as if items had fallen down. Worried and not wanting to disturb the scene, the family decided to wait outside for professionals to arrive. An experienced Arlington police officer was quickly dispatched to the serene apartment complex. With 14 years of experience, the officer had seen many things, but right away, something felt slightly unusual about this call. Welfare checks were rarely requested this early in the morning, and seeing an entire family standing outside waiting added an air of mystery to the crisp morning breeze. Upon entering the residence, the officer noted the telltale signs of a staged burglary. The living room was in disarray, with compact discs scattered about and furniture slightly askew. The officer called out, but only silence answered. After checking the living room, kitchen, and bathroom, the only space left was the bedroom. The officer moved methodically, focused solely on finding the beloved grandparents and ensuring they were okay. At first glance, the bedroom seemed empty. The officer thought perhaps they had simply gone out for a peaceful morning walk. But as the officer turned to leave, flashlight in hand, a set of hand smudges on the wall near a small closet caught their eye. Relying on years of careful training, the officer opened the closet door. Inside, they found Long and Hong. Tragically, the sweet couple had passed away. They had been taken from this world, victims of a carefully staged crime. The veteran officer, though momentarily rattled by the sudden loss of two beloved community members, immediately stepped back into the living room, maintaining absolute professionalism. The officer keyed the radio and requested a supervisor and the crime scene unit. Chapter 3, The Stage Puzzle. When the Arlington homicide investigators arrived, they were deeply moved by the tragic loss of such a wonderful couple. The scene presented a baffling array of clues. It initially looked like a robbery that had taken a terrible turn, but the seasoned detectives, some with 21 years of experience in homicide, knew better than to take things at face value. The scene was peculiar. To the sharp eyes of the investigators, the clues seemed almost comical in their exaggeration, as if someone had watched too many crime television shows and tried to recreate them all at once. There was a plate of crushed prescription pills resting on the coffee table. Nearby lay a marijuana cigarette, but the most glaringly out-of-place item was a beer bottle wrapped neatly in a light blue bandana, sitting squarely in the middle of the room like a theatrical prop. "This looks like a calling card," one detective mused, scratching his head. Arlington did have a history of neighborhood gang activity, and the local gang unit confirmed that the light blue bandana was a known symbol. However, the detectives remained highly skeptical. Most local youth involved in such groups did not commit crimes of this nature, especially against universally adored grandparents. "It is too perfect of a crime scene," the lead investigator noted, sipping a warm cup of coffee as they analyzed the room. "It is too set up. I have every reason to believe this gang evidence is entirely staged." The team meticulously collected the peculiar evidence. They gathered a marijuana cigarette to extract a genetic profile, hoping it would lead them to the person who had orchestrated this bizarre tableau. They also collected fibers and carefully processed the area for fingerprints. The detectives were determined to solve this mystery, honoring the memory of Long and Hong by bringing the truth to light. Chapter 4: Alibis and Inquiries. Seeking answers, the investigators sat down with the grieving family. Chow Tran, speaking on behalf of the family, due to his strong grasp of English, provided a detailed timeline of the previous evening. The family had gathered to celebrate Long's birthday. It was a joyous occasion filled with laughter, good food, and a lively game of cards. Chow explained that the elderly couple had stayed at the party until about 10:30 at night, before receiving a ride home from another relative. That was the last time the family had seen them smiling and happy. When asked about potential enemies, Chow was adamant. No one could think of any reason to want this couple dead. They were sweet, they were generous, they were hard-working, and they had great ties to the community. Chow also clarified that while some families prefer to keep cash at home, Long and Hong did not keep significant amounts of money in the apartment. He mentioned that the sewing business had been struggling and that they had sought spiritual help, believing the business might be clouded by negative energy. The detectives checked the family's alibis thoroughly. Everyone had been together playing cards, and their stories matched perfectly. Furthermore, when a laboratory returned the genetic testing results from the marijuana cigarette found at the scene, the profile did not match Chow, any family members, or anyone in the National Criminal Database. Adding another layer to the mystery, the detectives received a routine phone call from a major insurance company. Long and Hong held a substantial life insurance policy, valued at over $1 million, intended to protect the family business in case of tragedy. Chow Tran was listed as one of the primary beneficiaries. When asked about this, Chow reasonably explained that the policy was a standard measure to ensure the sewing business could survive any unforeseen losses. Despite conducting over 50 interviews with family members, neighbors, and business associates, the police found no solid leads. For over 3 years, the case grew quiet, resting safely in the hands of detectives who refused to forget the kind elderly couple from Vietnam. Chapter 5: The Absurdity of the Horse Thief. Sometimes the universe has a highly humorous way of delivering justice. The break in this deeply complex case did not come from a dramatic undercover operation or a high-speed chase. It came, quite surprisingly, from a stolen horse. In the year 2015, a young man named Willie Guillory made a remarkably foolish decision in the city of Houston. He decided to steal a horse. In the great state of Texas, stealing livestock is a serious felony offense. When Willie was arrested for his unexpected foray into modern rustling, Standard procedure required him to submit a genetic sample to the national database. Willie had just turned an adult, back in 2012, at the time of the Arlington mystery. Willie had been only 16 years old, because he was a minor with no prior serious offenses. His genetic profile had not been in the system when the detectives first tested the marijuana, cigarette. But now, thanks to his inexplicable desire to steal a horse, Willie's information was entered into the system. Almost immediately, bells rang in the Arlington Police Department. The national database matched Willie's profile perfectly to the evidence left on the coffee table 3 years prior. On October 17, 2015, detectives brought Willie into the station. Initially, they spoke to him about his parole violations regarding the horse. Willie confidently denied ever being in Arlington. "I promise you, I was nowhere around Arlington," Willie insisted. The detective smiled gently. "Well, that is why we are going to check your genetic profile again, because the science tells us you were. Sitting right there in that apartment." When the detective patiently explained how genetic science worked and how they had found his exact profile on the staged evidence, Willie's tough exterior melted away completely. He broke down and confessed. "Yes, I was there," Willie admitted, "but I did not do it alone." Chapter 6. A Tale of Two Scammers. Willie unraveled a story that sounded like a script from a bizarre movie. He explained that back in 2012, his uncle, 49-year-old Bobby Guillory, had recruited him for a job. Bobby told his young nephew that they were going to drive 3 hours north to Arlington to take care of some business. According to Willie, his uncle had a key to the apartment. Their master plan was to stage a break-in and make it look like a local gang had committed a terrible crime. The plan my uncle came up with was to throw stuff around, set up evidence to make it look like thugs ended up committing the crime, Willie confessed. "We had beer bottles, a blue bandana, pills, marijuana. My uncle actually left the remains of a marijuana cigarette. He smoked a little bit of it and left it there. It was a brilliantly flawed plan. By leaving the staged evidence to throw the police off the trail, Bobby had inadvertently provided the exact clue the police needed to solve the case." Willie revealed the true mastermind behind this theatrical plot, Daphne Wright, the spiritual advisor from Houston. Bobby had met Daphne through a friend. At the time, Bobby was unemployed, desperate, and struggling to make ends meet. Daphne, recognizing a malleable participant, offered Bobby $10,000 to travel to Arlington and resolve her debt collection problem permanently. Daphne was furious that Chow and Hong owed her money for her spiritual services. When she discovered they had a massive life insurance policy, her greed took over. She orchestrated the entire event, hoping to force the family to collect the insurance money so she could finally be paid her exorbitant fees. Armed with this incredible new information, the detectives traveled to Katy, Texas, in December 2015 to speak with Bobby Guillory. At first, Bobby was quiet, but when presented with a search warrant for his own genetic information, he realized the puzzle was complete. Bobby confessed, corroborating his nephew's story. He painted a picture of Daphne as a spiritual loan shark, a woman who controlled those around her with loud demands and false promises of magical prosperity. She was a mastermind behind this whole entire deal, Bobby explained. She dictated everything that was supposed to go down. But Bobby dropped one final, shocking twist in the laps of the investigators. When asked how Daphne had acquired the key to the Arlington apartment, Bobby pointed a finger directly at the family's spokesperson. "Chow Tran," Bobby said. Chapter 7. The Mastermind and the Truth. The detectives were blindsided by the accusation. They had developed a cordial relationship with Chow over the years of the investigation. To think he might be involved was a heavy realization. When they attempted to speak with Chow again, he immediately directed them to his attorney. Before diving into Chow's potential involvement, the team focused on the woman pulling the strings. In August 2016, detectives arrived at Daphne Wright's comfortable Houston home. Daphne was exactly as Bobby described: loud, direct, and completely in charge of her subservient husband, Howard. When asked about her business with Chow, Daphne was cold and evasive. She confirmed Chow was a client, but refused to detail the money he owed her. "What happens if someone does not pay you?" a detective asked. Daphne looked right back, her eyes narrowing. "Oh, they will pay." Despite her tough facade, the police had gathered enough evidence from the Guillories to secure an arrest warrant. During a search of Daphne's home, they discovered a hidden ledger. The book detailed her outrageous fees for supposedly removing curses and applying blessings. She was charging vulnerable people $10, $20, $30, and even $40,000 for simple conversations and imaginary services. The detectives were astounded by the sheer audacity of her greed. Daphne's husband, Howard, appeared genuinely clueless about his wife's covert operations, maintaining her innocence and insisting he knew absolutely nothing about the Arlington incident. Daphne herself requested a lawyer and refused to confess, believing she could outsmart the justice system. To secure a conviction against a manipulator like Daphne, the prosecutors knew they needed inside information. They needed Chow Tran to testify. Financial records revealed that since his in-law's passing, Chow had purchased a new home and abandoned the family's sewing business. The prosecutors approached Chow with an offer of immunity in exchange for his full, unvarnished testimony about Daphne's operation. Sitting safely beside his lawyer, Chow spun a tale of fear and manipulation. He claimed that Daphne had essentially taken control of his family's mind. He stated that his mother-in-law, terrified of Daphne's supposed mystical powers and the dark curses she threatened to unleash, had voluntarily offered herself as a sacrifice so the family could collect the insurance and pay off the spiritual debt. The detectives found this claim utterly ludicrous. No one believed that the sweet, joyous Hong Lee would orchestrate such a bizarre end. The defense team during the trial would later argue fiercely that Chow simply wanted the $150,000 payout for himself, and that he had willingly participated, even leaving the apartment key under the mat for Daphne's hired men. However, the justice system often requires difficult compromises to catch the biggest fish. In August 2019, Daphne Wright finally faced a jury. Chow's testimony successfully painted her as the greedy, manipulative architect of the crime. Despite the defense's best efforts to discredit Chow and point out the lack of written documentation for the enormous debt, the jury saw through Daphne's facade. In September 2019, the jury returned their verdict. Daphne Wright was found guilty of her crimes and received life in prison without the possibility of parole. Her reign of spiritual extortion was officially over. Epilogue: Light in the Darkness. While the legal outcome left some investigators frustrated that Chow Tran was not charged, they found deep solace in knowing that the primary instigators, Daphne and her hired accomplices, were no longer a threat to society. The lead detective, reflecting on the arduous 7-year journey, noted with calm certainty, "What is done in the dark will always come to light. I thoroughly believe they will all eventually have to answer for their actions." The story of Long Nguyen and Hong Lee remains a poignant reminder of profound love of family and the lengths to which people will go to achieve the American dream. Their memories are not defined by the bizarre actions of a few greedy individuals, but by the beautiful legacy they built, the vibrant community they loved, and the joyful nights spent playing cards surrounded by laughter. This complex case stands as a powerful educational testament to the dedication of modern law enforcement. It highlights the importance of critical thinking, the absolute marvel of forensic science, and the humorous reality that sometimes justice rides on a stolen horse. It serves as a gentle warning to always seek practical, grounded solutions to life's challenges, and to cherish the real magic in the world, the enduring strength of truth, community, and unconditional love. The morning sun rose gently over the quiet suburban streets of Arlington, Texas, on June 10th, 2012. The air was warm, carrying the promise of a peaceful Sunday, the kind of day usually reserved for family breakfast and slow walks in the neighborhood. The city was a beautiful tapestry of different cultures, a place where people from all over the world came to build a better life. Yet, beneath this tranquil surface, a mystery was about to unfold that would test the resolve of seasoned law enforcement officers and challenge the community's understanding of trust. At 7:29 in the morning, the Emergency Dispatch Center received a call that shattered the weekend calm. The operator, trained to handle panic with a steady voice, answered promptly. On the other end of the line was a 38-year-old Vietnamese immigrant named Chow Tran. His voice trembled with a palpable anxiety as he asked for a welfare check on his elderly in-laws. The operator asked for their names to log the information into the system. Chow spelled out carefully, stating his father-in-law was named Long Nguyen, noting the spelling letter by letter, and estimating his age to be in his early 70s. He explained that his wife, his son, and himself were standing outside the apartment of his in-laws. They had sent a teenage boy to knock on the door, but there was no answer. Looking through a window, they had seen that things were knocked over, and a deep sense of dread had prevented them from entering. They needed help. Officer Weller, a dedicated public servant with 14 years of experience, was dispatched immediately. Because it was so early in the morning, a welfare check was slightly unusual, but Weller approached the situation with the calm professionalism that defined his career. When he arrived at the apartment complex, he noticed the entire family standing outside. They looked terrified, huddled together in the warm morning air. It was clear that something was profoundly wrong. Entering the residence, Officer Weller immediately noticed the disarray. Furniture was moved, compact discs were scattered across the floor, and the living room looked as though a sudden storm had passed through it. He called out, his voice echoing in the empty spaces, but there was no reply. He checked the living room, the kitchen, and the bathroom. Everything was silent. The only room left to check was the primary bedroom. As he stepped into the bedroom, his initial sweep revealed nothing out of the ordinary. His primary focus was simply finding the elderly couple, hoping they had perhaps gone for a morning walk and forgotten to lock up. He was just about to turn around and leave the room, relieved that no one was hurt, when his flashlight beam caught something unusual. There were smudges on the wall, right next to a very small closet door. Every instinct honed over his long career whispered warning. He hesitated for a moment, sensing the gravity of what might lie behind that door. But duty compelled him forward. He opened the closet door and found Long Nguyen and his wife, Hong Lee. They had passed away. The scene was heartbreaking. The couple had been bound with duct tape in a manner that spoke of a deep, tragic cruelty. In that split second, Officer Weller knew he was standing at the edge of a profound mystery. He stepped backward, moving out of the bedroom and into the living room, taking a deep breath to steady his racing heart. He reached for his radio, bypassing any abbreviations or jargon, and clearly requested a supervisor and a crime scene unit. When the homicide investigators arrived, including a veteran detective who had been on the force for 21 years, they were equally taken aback. The veteran detective noted that this was one of the most severe cases he had ever encountered. The evidence suggested a struggle had begun the moment the couple walked through their front door. Yet, despite the sadness of the discovery, the officers shared a quiet, unbreakable determination. They would find the truth. They would bring justice to this family. Chapter 2, The Dream and the Struggle. To understand the tragedy, the detectives knew they had to understand the lives of Long Nguyen and Hong Lee. The couple had immigrated to the United States from Vietnam in the year 2000, bringing with them a rich heritage, time-honored traditions, and a deep, unconditional love for their family. They were a sweet, generous couple who never bothered anyone. In their community, they were beloved, known for their kindness and their bright smiles. They had chosen to settle in Arlington, Texas, a city that boasted a large and vibrant Vietnamese community. The area had become a haven for immigrants looking to build businesses, raise families, and pursue the American dream. Long and Hong saw a beautiful opportunity to create a lasting legacy for their 3 children and their grandchildren. Upon arriving in Texas, the hard-working couple started a commercial sewing business. They enlisted the help of their son-in-law, Chow Tran, to manage the operations. Because Chow spoke the most fluent English in the family, he became the public face of the enterprise, dealing with contractors and navigating the complex world of American commerce. For nearly a decade, their dedication paid off handsomely. Their American dream materialized when they secured a highly lucrative contract to manufacture garments for a massive entertainment corporation. However, business is often as unpredictable as the weather. By the year 2011, the family's good fortune began to wane. They lost their major corporate contract, and the sewing business started to decline rapidly. The financial pressure mounted, casting a shadow over the family's once bright future. In many cultures, sudden misfortune is sometimes viewed through a spiritual lens. The family, holding firmly to the ancient beliefs of their homeland, began to suspect that their string of bad luck was the result of a negative spiritual influence, a curse. For thousands of years, traditional mysticism suggested that spiritual advisors could petition forces of prosperity and protection to heal businesses and restore harmony. Desperate to save the legacy they had built, Chow Tran and his mother-in-law, Hong Lee, searched for a solution while browsing through a local Vietnamese newspaper. They stumbled upon an advertisement for a spiritual advisor located 250 miles away in Houston, Texas. The advisor claimed she had the power to remove bad luck, lift curses, and restore financial prosperity. Believing this was the answer to their prayers, they reached out for help, unknowingly opening the door to a tragic deception. Chapter 3: The Illusion of Evidence. Back at the apartment, the crime scene unit was meticulously cataloging every detail. The detectives were initially puzzled by the sheer aggression of the crime. Robberies did not typically escalate to such extremes unless there was a deeply personal motive or a calculated plan. As they combed through the scattered belongings, the investigators found several items that seemed oddly out of place. On the coffee table rested a plate of crushed prescription pills, arranged as if prepared for consumption. Nearby lay the remains of a marijuana cigarette. But the most glaring piece of evidence was a blue cloth bandana wrapped deliberately around a glass beer bottle. In Arlington, certain local groups were known to use specific colors, like light blue, to mark their territory or claim responsibility for illicit activities. The detectives consulted with the specialized gang unit, who confirmed the color's significance. It appeared to be a calling card. However, the seasoned homicide detectives possessed a healthy skepticism. The clues felt too obvious, too neatly arranged. Gang members typically avoided leaving such blatant, theatrical evidence at a scene, especially one of this magnitude. It was as if someone had watched a television show about criminals and tried to recreate it. The investigators theorized that the scene had been intentionally staged to mislead them. Despite their doubts about the gang theory, the detectives treated every piece of evidence like gold. They carefully collected the marijuana cigarette to extract a deoxyribonucleic acid profile. They took hair fibers, swab surfaces, and meticulously processed the duct tape for fingerprints. They were hopeful that modern science would cut through the theatrical deception and point them toward the real perpetrators. Chapter 4: Alibis and Hidden Fortunes. The investigation naturally progressed to interviewing the family members. Given the language barrier with some of the older relatives, Chow Tran acted as the primary spokesperson. Detective Stewart sat down with the 38-year-old man, observing his demeanor carefully. Chow explained that on the evening of June 9th, the entire family had gathered to celebrate Long Wen's birthday. It was supposed to be a joyous occasion. According to Chow, his in-laws arrived at his house around 4:30 in the afternoon. They ate together, laughed, and played card games until shortly after 10 o'clock at night. Another family member then gave the elderly couple a ride home. That was the last time they were seen alive. When asked about potential motives, Chow maintained that his in-laws had no enemies. They did not keep large sums of cash at home, and their struggling sewing business made them unlikely targets for a lucrative robbery. Chow cooperated fully, providing timelines and answering every question without hesitation. He and the rest of the family provided genetic samples and fingerprints to be compared against the evidence found at the scene. With solid alibis and cooperative behavior, the family members did not immediately appear as suspects. But routine phone calls soon shifted the detective's perspective. An insurance company contacted the police department to report a massive life insurance policy held by the deceased couple. The policy was valued at over $1 million, and one of the primary beneficiaries was none other than Chow Tran. When questioned about the substantial financial safety net, Chow explained that the policies were purchased years ago to ensure the business could continue if a key family member passed away. While the explanation was plausible, the existence of such a large sum of money introduced a powerful potential motive into the investigation. Days turned into weeks, and the laboratory results finally returned. To the immense disappointment of the investigative team, the genetic profile extracted from a marijuana cigarette did not match Chow Tran, any family member, or any individual currently registered in the combined deoxyribonucleic acid index system, the national database managed by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The database only housed profiles of adults convicted of felony offenses. If the perpetrator was a minor or someone with a clean record, their genetic blueprint would remain invisible. The detectives had cast a wide net, interviewing over 50 people, including neighbors, extended family, and business associates. They left no stone unturned, yet the lead slowly evaporated. For 3 long years, the case went entirely cold. But the detectives never forgot Long Nguyen and Hong Lee. They simply waited for science and time to align. Chapter 5: The Horse Thief and the Science of Justice. Justice has a curious way of revealing itself, often through the most unexpected avenues. In October 2015, over 3 years after the tragic loss of the elderly couple, a bizarre incident breathed new life into the stagnant investigation. Hundreds of miles away, a young man named Willie Guillory made a foolish decision. He stole a horse. In the state of Texas, stealing livestock is a serious felony offense. When Willie was apprehended for the theft, he was processed into the criminal justice system as an adult. He was swabbed, and his genetic profile was uploaded into the national database. Willie was 16 years old in 2012. Because he was a juvenile at the time of the murders, his genetic material had not been on file when the detectives first searched the database. But now, as an adult with a felony conviction, his information triggered a system-wide alert. The computer servers silently matched his profile to the biological material left on the marijuana cigarette at the Arlington crime scene. On October 17, 2015, Arlington detectives brought Willie Guillory in for questioning. Initially, they approached him regarding a violation of his parole, keeping their true intentions hidden. When they finally steered the conversation toward the events in Arlington 3 years prior, Willie was defensive. He swore he had never been to the city and insisted he had no involvement. The detectives, employing a brilliant mix of patience and educational strategy, gently explained the irrefutable nature of genetic science. They explained how human biology leaves an invisible but permanent signature. When confronted with the undeniable fact that his unique biological code was found inside the apartment, Willie's tough exterior crumbled. He broke down in tears and confessed. Willie admitted that he was present at the scene, but he insisted he did not act alone. He pointed the finger at his uncle, a 49-year-old man named Bobby Guillory. According to Willie, life had left him with few choices. and when his uncle commanded him to help with a job in Arlington, he felt compelled to obey. Willie confirmed the detective's long-held theory. The crime scene was entirely staged. The plan had been to scatter items, knock over furniture, and leave behind the blue bandana, the pills, and a beer bottle to create the illusion of a random gang-related attack. Willie confessed that he had smoked a portion of the marijuana cigarette to add to the authenticity of the scene, inadvertently leaving behind the very evidence that would secure his downfall. The young man described a harrowing sequence of events. But what struck the detectives most was the revelation of a larger conspiracy. Willie claimed that neither he nor his uncle had any personal vendetta against the elderly couple. They were simply hired hands. The entire plot was orchestrated by a woman Willie had met through his uncle, a spiritual advisor from Houston named Daphne Wright. Chapter 6. The Spiritual Trap. The pieces of the puzzle were finally snapping together. The detectives now knew this was not a random act of violence, nor was it a gang initiation. It was a calculated murder for hire plot rooted in greed and manipulation. They turned their attention to building a comprehensive profile of Daphne Wright. Daphne was a 44-year-old woman living in Houston, married with 3 daughters. She presented herself to the community as a powerful spiritual advisor. For a hefty fee, she promised to turn struggling businesses around, banish bad luck, and bring prosperity to families facing hardship. She was a dominant personality, charismatic and loud, effectively ruling her household and commanding absolute obedience from her clients. When detectives reached out to Chow Tran to ask if he knew Daphne Wright, his reaction was highly suspicious. Instead of cooperating, as he had in the past, Chow immediately directed the investigators to his attorney. The sudden wall of legal defense suggested that Chow knew the net was tightening. To bridge the gap between Chow and Daphne, the detectives needed to speak with the middleman, Bobby Guillory. In December of 2015, they traveled to Katy, Texas, to apprehend the 52-year-old uncle. Bobby had no prior criminal history. When faced with the overwhelming evidence, including a search warrant for his own biological sample, Bobby surrendered to the weight of his guilt. During his interrogation, Bobby expressed deep remorse, claiming he had been desperately poor and hungry in 2011 when he first met Daphne. Daphne recognized his vulnerability and offered him $10,000 to carry out the hit. Bobby revealed the dark truth about Daphne's spiritual business. She was functioning as a mystical loan shark. Bobby explained that despite Daphne's expensive rituals, Long Nguyen and Hong Lee's business never improved. They remained trapped in financial distress. Yet, pushed by fear and a deeply ingrained belief in Daphne's claimed spiritual authority, Chow Tran had continued to purchase her services on credit. The debt had ballooned to an astonishing sum, somewhere between $250,000 and $280,000. When Daphne demanded payment, she discovered that the family was virtually bankrupt. However, she also learned of the massive life insurance policies. Seeing an opportunity for a massive payout, Daphne orchestrated a plan to eliminate the elderly couple so the family could collect the insurance, money, and settle their supernatural debt. When detectives asked Bobby how he and Willie gained access to the apartment without forcing the door, Bobby provided a shocking answer. He claimed that Daphne had given them a key. And when asked where Daphne acquired the key, Bobby stated firmly that it came from Chow Tran. Chapter 7. The Betrayal and the Trial. The detectives were stunned by the depths of betrayal. They executed an arrest warrant for Daphne right at her Houston home. During the search of her residence, investigators uncovered meticulously kept ledgers detailing her spiritual fees. The documents showed she was charging desperate people tens of thousands of dollars for her alleged services. Daphne, however, remained silent, demanding her lawyer and refusing to cooperate. Meanwhile, investigators scrutinized Chow Tran's financial records. They discovered that following the tragic passing of his in-laws and the subsequent insurance payout Chow had purchased a new home and permanently closed the family's sewing business. The circumstantial evidence strongly suggested he was a willing participant in the scheme to sacrifice his elders for financial gain. However, the legal system requires concrete proof. To ensure the conviction of the mastermind, Daphne Wright, the prosecution faced a difficult moral and strategic dilemma. They needed insider testimony to prove that Daphne had hired the hitmen and orchestrated the plot. To secure this testimony, they offered Chow Tran immunity from prosecution in exchange for his full cooperation on the witness. Stunned, it was a deal with the devil, but a necessary step to dismantle the criminal enterprise. With his attorney present, Chow spun a bizarre narrative. He claimed that Daphne had exerted an overwhelming psychological control over his mind and body. He alleged that it was actually his mother-in-law, Hong Lee, who had volunteered to be sacrificed to save the family from Daphne's spiritual wrath. The investigators found this claim utterly ludicrous, recognizing it as a desperate attempt by Chow to minimize his own monstrous greed. Still, his testimony was the key to unlocking a conviction. In August of 2019, Daphne Wright's trial began. The courtroom became a theater where science, human frailty, and the pursuit of justice collided. Chow took the stand, portraying Daphne as a ruthless extortionist. The defense fiercely attacked Chow's credibility, pointing out the lack of any digital communication, proving the enormous debt, and arguing that Chow himself was the true mastermind who pocketed the $850,000 payout. Despite the defense's efforts to shift the blame entirely onto Chow, the jury carefully weighed the evidence. They considered the testimonies of Willie and Bobby Guillory, the biological evidence, the ledgers found in Daphne's home, and the tragic sequence of events. In September of 2019, the jury returned their verdict. Daphne Wright was found guilty of capital murder. She was sentenced to spend the remainder of her life in prison, without the possibility of parole. Bobby and Willie Guillory also faced severe consequences for their actions, ensuring they could no longer pose a threat to society. Chapter 8: A Legacy of Light. The resolution of the case brought a profound sense of relief to the Arlington Police Department and the local community, though it carried a bittersweet undertone. It was immensely frustrating for the dedicated detectives that Chow Tran, shielded by his immunity deal, walked away free. Yet, the investigators held on to a powerful, enduring belief. Truth eventually finds its way into the light, and those who commit wrongdoings ultimately face the consequences of their actions, whether in a courtroom or through the relentless weight of their own conscience. The story of Long Nguyen and Hong Lee is not solely defined by the tragic circumstances of their passing. It is a story of incredible resilience, a testament to a beautiful couple who crossed oceans to build a dream. They were a prominent, respected Asian family whose legacy was one of hard work, generosity, and deep devotion to their community. This complex investigation showcased the brilliance of modern forensics, proving that the tiniest invisible trace of biological material can bridge the gap of years and miles to deliver justice. It highlighted the unwavering dedication of public servants who refuse to let a case remain cold. Most importantly, it serves as an educational reminder of the dangers of exploitation, urging communities to rely on logic, mutual support, and true financial counsel rather than falling prey to those who peddle fear under the guise of mysticism. While the shadows of the past can never be fully erased, the light of justice shines brightly in Arlington. The memory of the gentle couple endures, inspiring those who knew them to live with kindness and to cherish the bonds of family, proving that love and truth will always outlast deceit and darkness. The morning sun rose over the city of Arlington, Texas, casting a warm, golden glow across the quiet suburban neighborhoods that defined this vibrant corner of Tarrant County. It was a place where dreams were built and cultures converged, creating a peaceful community where everyone worked hard to secure a bright future for their children. Among the many families who had found a home here The local community held deep values of family unity, respect, and mutual support. Neighbors looked out for one another, businesses thrived on trust, and the gentle rhythm of daily life brought a sense of shared harmony to everyone who lived there. Among the most respected members of this close-knit neighborhood were an elderly gentleman named Long Nguyen and his gentle wife, Hong Lu, having traveled to the United States many years prior to build their lives anew. They brought with them a profound dedication to their heritage and a deep love for their family. They were a bright example of kindness and perseverance, always greeting others with warm smiles and offering assistance whenever someone needed a helping hand. To the entire neighborhood, they were a sweet, peaceful couple who never caused any trouble and focused entirely on creating a positive future for their children and grandchildren. Their family commercial sewing business was the heart of their daily activities, a collaborative effort where everyone contributed. They spent long, productive hours working alongside their son-in-law, Chow Tran, who helped manage the daily operations and communication with various local partners. Chow was an articulate 38-year-old man who took great pride in representing the family enterprise. For a long time, the business flourished, securing notable contracts that filled the family with immense hope. However, when economic conditions changed and those major agreements concluded, the business began to face significant challenges. During times of difficulty, people often looked to traditional beliefs for guidance, comfort, and a sense of direction. For generations, traditional cultural practices emphasized seeking harmony, peace, and spiritual balance to navigate the natural trials of life, hoping to invite positive energy back into their lives and restore the success of their commercial sewing workshop. Chow Tran and his mother-in-law, Hong Lu, decided to consult a spiritual advisor named Daphne Wright, who operated out of a residence located in the city of Houston. Daphne advertised services aimed at helping families overcome obstacles, lifting negative influences, and welcoming good fortune back into their homes and enterprises. Eager to support the family and protect the legacy they had built, Chow traveled to Houston for a consultation. He participated in traditional rituals designed to foster hope and peace, returning to Arlington with a renewed sense of optimism that their difficulties would soon transform into positive achievements. However, as the months passed, the situation grew more complex. On the morning of June 10th, 2012, at approximately 7:29 in the morning, emergency services received a call requesting a welfare check at the residence of the elderly couple. Chow Tran explained that family members had gathered outside the apartment and were concerned because there was no response at the door, though an open window suggested someone should be home. Officer Weller arrived quickly at the location, observing the concerned family waiting patiently outside. Upon entering the apartment to ensure everyone was safe, the officer noticed that the rooms were in complete disarray, showing clear signs of a serious disturbance. While checking the residence, Officer Weller located the elderly couple inside a small bedroom closet. They had been tightly bound with heavy adhesive tape and were completely unresponsive. The responding officer immediately requested the assistance of a supervisor and the specialized team to secure the location and begin a thorough investigation. When the primary investigators arrived at the scene, they observed the severe nature of the incident. The room showed clear signs of a struggle, with household items and compact discs scattered across the floor. In the living room, detectives discovered several objects, including a blue bandana wrapped around a bottle and other materials that initially suggested the involvement of local youth gangs known to operate in the wider region. However, experienced investigators immediately felt a sense of skepticism, realizing that the arrangement of the items appeared unusual, almost as if someone had deliberately tried to create the appearance of a random burglary. The specialized team carefully gathered all potential physical evidence, including hair fibers, prints, and materials from the scene, to establish a clear profile of whoever had entered the apartment. Meanwhile, detectives conducted detailed interviews with the family members to understand the background of the sweet and hardworking couple. Chow Tran acted as the main spokesperson for the family, explaining that the night before the incident, they had all gathered to celebrate his father-in-law's birthday, enjoying a wonderful evening together until approximately 10 o'clock at night. A detailed review by the medical examiner confirmed that the gentle couple had tragically passed away due to suffocation resulting from the restrictive layers of tape applied to their faces. This revelation strengthened the determination of the investigators to uncover complete truth behind this tragic event, ensuring that the peaceful values of the community would be upheld. As the days progressed, a routine notification from an insurance company introduced a new development to the case. Investigators learned that the elderly couple held substantial life insurance policies totaling a significant amount, close to $1 million, with Chow Tran designated as a major beneficiary. When asked about this detail, Chow explained that the policies were originally established to protect the continuity of the commercial sewing business and provide long-term security for the grandchildren. He also provided a verified account of his activities on the night of the incident, explaining that the family had remained together playing cards until late in the evening. The laboratory analysis of the physical evidence collected from the scene did not reveal an immediate match with any existing profiles in the national database, because the database primarily recorded individuals with prior major adult convictions. Investigators suspected that the person responsible might have been a minor at the time, meaning their profile would not yet be registered, with no further immediate leads. The investigation continued quietly for more than 2 years as detectives diligently looked for new information. The breakthrough occurred in October 2015 when a young man named Willie Guillory was arrested in Houston for an unrelated felony offense involving a horse. Because a felony charge required the collection and submission of genetic markers to the national database, Willie's profile was officially recorded for the first time. The system immediately identified a precise match with the physical evidence retrieved from the Arlington apartment 3 years earlier. Detectives immediately brought the 19-year-old Willie Guillory in for questioning. Confronted with the undeniable scientific data, the young man broke down and provided a complete account of what had occurred. He confessed that in the summer of 2012, when he was 16 years old, his uncle, Bobby Guillory, had asked him to assist with a task in Arlington. Willie explained that his uncle possessed a key to the apartment, allowing him to enter easily and deliberately arrange the items to make the incident look like the work of a random street gang. Willie further revealed that the entire plan had been organized by Daphne Wright, the spiritual advisor from Houston. According to Willie, Daphne had expressed intense anger over an outstanding financial debt, stating clearly that if the funds were not provided, she wanted the couple removed permanently. Following this critical revelation, investigators quickly located the 52-year-old Bobby Guillory in Katy, Texas. In December of 2015, facing the serious charges against him, Bobby also chose to cooperate fully, explaining that he'd been experiencing extreme financial distress at the time and had been promised a payment of $10,000 by Daphne Wright to carry out the instruction. Bobby explained that the financial relationship between the family and the spiritual advisor had grown increasingly strained. Chow Tran and his mother-in-law had continued to request Daphne's services over a long period, running up an informal credit balance that eventually grew to between $250,000 and $280,000. When Daphne demanded full payment, the family was unable to produce the cash, leading to a discussion about utilizing the substantial life insurance policies to cover the total amount. Most significantly, Bobby asserted that the key to the residence had been obtained through Chow Tran. With these detailed accounts, detectives turned their full focus toward Daphne Wright at her Houston residence. Investigators discovered a structured home where Daphne exercised significant influence over daily affairs. A thorough search of property revealed meticulous business, records indicating that she charged substantial sums for her traditional services, while her husband maintained that he had absolutely no knowledge of any improper activities. Daphne remained quiet, choosing to communicate only through her legal representative. To ensure a strong and complete presentation for the court, prosecutors realized they needed direct testimony regarding the origin of the plan. They offered an agreement of immunity to Chow Tran in exchange for his full and truthful account of the events during the upcoming trial. Chow Tran explained that his family felt an overwhelming sense of psychological pressure, believing that Daphne possessed powerful spiritual capabilities that could bring great misfortune upon them if the debt remained unpaid. He claimed that his mother-in-law, out of an intense desire to protect the rest of the family from financial ruin, had initially suggested sacrificing her own well-being so the insurance proceeds could satisfy the outstanding balance. Chow stated that Daphne had strongly supported the idea, expanding the plan to include both elders to ensure the total insurance payout would completely cover the outstanding debt. He admitted that he had placed the key in a designated location outside the apartment for the individuals to retrieve. In August of 2019, the formal trial of Daphne Wright began. Chow Tran presented his detailed testimony, describing the intense financial demands and the atmosphere of pressure that had developed over the preceding years. The defense team strongly challenged his statements, arguing that Chow had acted out of personal motivation to secure the insurance funds for himself and had utilized a narrative of spiritual influence to shift responsibility away from his own actions. The members of the jury evaluated all the testimony, the financial documents, and the unique cultural context presented throughout the proceedings. In September of 2019, the jury returned a verdict of guilty on the charges of capital murder. Daphne Wright received a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole, bringing a definitive legal resolution to the case. The entire account served as a profound reminder to the community about the vital importance of transparency, honesty, and mutual care during times of difficulty. It highlighted the value of seeking positive, open solutions to life's challenges, and reinforced the strength of a neighborhood dedicated to justice and the well-being of every resident. The memory of the sweet, hard-working elderly couple remained a cherished part of the local community, inspiring everyone to live with integrity, support one another with kindness, and protect the peaceful harmony of their shared home.